He didn't sign a single one, not one damn signature. Caroline Levitt remained unfazed. Without hesitation, she leaned into the microphone and dropped a truth no press secretary in modern American history had ever dared to speak. 64 pardons, she said coldly, for 1,245 sentence commutations. And Joe Biden didn't sign any of them. The silence that followed wasn't just heavy, it hit like an explosion. Think it's political spin? Then explain this. She held up the report as if it were toxic. These aren't rumors or anonymous leaks. These are federally time-stamped, machine-stamped pardons, mass-produced, pre-signed, and signed by a robot pen, not a president's hand. The words hung in the air, metallic and sharp. We didn't have a president. We had a signature machine. Her voice grew sharper. We didn't see decisions, only orders printed like junk mail. Thousands of get-out-of-jail-free cards rubber-stamped by a man who, by mid-2023, couldn't even remember which state he was in, much less who he was pardoning. Just then, Donald J. Trump appeared, calm, controlled, and deadly serious. You know why I'm back, he said. Because the last guy wasn't truly present. They elected a figurehead and handed the reins to the deep state. They used his name to shield their own, to protect Hunter, cover for Fouché, clear Schiff, and hand Liz Cheney her exit. He slammed a folder onto the desk. Want to talk about January 6th? Try December 12th, when 1,500 convicts had their sentences commuted in one day. That's not justice. That's a hostile takeover. And guess what? It was signed at 3:17 a.m. Caroline added. No, he wasn't awake. But the pen sure was. Trump leaned closer, pointing at the camera. This isn't incompetence. This is criminal. The government used a mentally unfit man as a puppet to carry out mass legal forgery. Every pardon signed under his name after August 3, 2023, is now under investigation and, if I have my way, will be revoked. Gasps rippled through the audience. But Trump wasn't finished. I warned the country. If he's not running the show, someone else is. Now we know who. The Soros Syndicate, unelected staffers, shadow operators. They didn't just pull strings. They printed policy. They ran the government through an autopen while the real president was out to lunch or worse. He sat back. And believe me, we're coming after every one of them. Caroline's voice returned, softer but heavy with weight. America, this isn't about politics. This is forgery. It's about a machine rewriting laws and names. You know who? Hunter, Fouché, Schiff, Cheney. They were pardoned, but not by a president. She paused, driving the point home. They claimed Joe Biden showed compassion, but what if it was only cognitive decline? Silence. Then the screen flashed white, revealing one chilling message, revenge of the autopen. The pardons were real. The president wasn't. She was brought in through a side door. No security, no staff, no electronic trace. Caroline Levitt stood alone in the dim hallway of the Federal Neurocognitive Assessment Center, just blocks from Capitol Hill. The building looked plain and sterile from outside, but inside it held power to shift America's political landscape overnight. A woman in a gray coat greeted her at the door, hair pulled tight, no smile. She didn't say her name. I'm not here, the woman said flatly. Neither are you. She handed Caroline a sealed manila folder with gloved hands, her voice barely a whisper. He didn't sign anything, she said. Not because he refused, but because he couldn't. Then she disappeared, like someone who had risked everything for one final chance at redemption. Caroline didn't open the folder right away. She waited until she was inside a black SUV with tinted windows, parked 3 blocks away. She braced herself, expecting something disturbing, maybe even damning. What she found was far worse. The document was a federal cognitive assessment report on Joseph R. Biden Jr., dated August 3, 2023. The language was clinical, harsh, and precise. It stated the patient suffered from ongoing disorientation, short-term memory loss, and reduced executive function. The medical opinion was clear. The subject consistently lacked the capacity to understand, evaluate, or authorize legally binding federal actions. She read the report twice, then a third time. Her throat tightened. From the backseat corner, her advisor leaned in and asked, "What does it say?" Caroline kept her eyes down, her voice steady but her hands shaking. "It says the President of the United States hasn't been mentally competent since August 3rd last year." The consequences were not only historic, they were explosive. When she arrived at the West Wing, Trump was waiting, not in his office, but in the Situation Room. He didn't speak as she entered, only gestured toward the table. She placed the folder there and slid it over to him. He opened it slowly, reading the first page before setting it aside as if it were toxic. "When did they find out?" he asked, still focused on the report. Caroline replied with precision, "The notes are dated August 3rd, but Biden continued signing documents, or rather, it was made to appear that way, well into December, including nearly 1,500 clemency orders issued in one night." Trump scoffed. "And they called me unfit." Caroline leaned closer, her voice tense. "Mr. President, if this report is accurate and gets leaked, it means every legal action signed by Biden after August 3rd is invalid." He didn't flinch. "That means all the pardons, policy memos, executive orders, and foreign aid packages?" She confirmed it. He tapped his fingers on the table, each tap louder than the last. "Start with the pardons," he said. "If they used a medically incapacitated man as a legal shield, then every criminal they freed should be back behind bars. And whoever approved those pardons—" He paused and met her eyes, the fire in his gaze unmistakable. "Should be in prison." They both leaned back, the gravity of the revelation filling the room. This wasn't just a political scandal, it was a constitutional crisis. Caroline broke the silence. "I've already cross-checked over 8,000 federal clemency records signed after August. They were done using AutoPen. No physical presence, no mental approval, no legal review." She lowered her voice. "It's not just negligence, Mr. President. It's fraud. Worse, it's treason." Trump nodded once. "Get the Department of Justice on the line." Quietly. "We're not announcing this to the press. At least, not yet." Caroline hesitated. "Why?" "Because the next time they hear about this," he said, rising, "it'll be in a federal courtroom." She followed him to the door, then stopped, searching his face. "Sir," she said cautiously, "if Biden hasn't been lucid since last summer, then who's been running the country?" Trump looked her straight in the eyes. "Not him," he said. "And not just one person." He turned away, but whispered almost under his breath, "They used a man's illness to take control of the government. That's not politics, that's a coup." With those words, the countdown on the cover-up began. They had the motive. They had the documents. And, most dangerously, they had proof. The Oval Office had never been quiet, not under this president. Papers were scattered across the resolute desk like evidence at a crime scene. Caroline stood to the side, arms crossed, eyes locked. Opposite her sat Trump's lead legal counsel, flipping through documents with a red pen in hand. Two more aides were hunched over a laptop, comparing timestamps and signatures. Every screen glowed with federal pardon records. Trump walked in without knocking. He didn't have to. The room snapped to alert. "Show me," he said, his voice slicing through the tension. Caroline said nothing, just nodded to the attorney, who turned the laptop around. "AutoPen markers," the lawyer explained. They're in the metadata. See this string, SIG AUPNBD23? That's the automated signature for Biden's executive orders starting August 5, 2023. Trump narrowed his gaze. You mean after the mental health report? Exactly, Caroline confirmed. From August through December, nearly 90% of Biden's pardons weren't physically signed. They were done by machine. Trump raised an eyebrow. How many? The lawyer didn't hesitate. Over 7,300 clemency actions, auto-penned. Trump pressed both hands to the desk and leaned in. Let me get this straight. The President of the United States couldn't sign his own name, and instead of invoking the 25th, they let a printer run the country? Silence filled the room. Trump didn't wait for a reply. He grabbed a thick folder from the desk, marked with the Department of Justice seal, opened it, and read, Hunter Biden, gun charges, tax evasion, foreign lobbying, pardoned. Flip. Anthony Fauci, evidence sealed under CO Act, pardoned. Flip. Adam Schiff, falsified FISA documents, pardoned. Flip. Liz Cheney, obstruction linked to January 6th leak, pardoned. He slammed the folder shut. Autopen, he snapped. That damn autopen freed all of them. Caroline stepped forward. And the worst part? They didn't even try to disguise it. No signature variation. Same vector strokes. Same clustered timestamps. Some filed just minutes apart, late into the night. Trump's fists clenched. This wasn't leadership. This was laundering. Legal laundering through a dead man's name. He turned to his team. Get the challenge ready. We file with the D.C. Circuit by Friday. Petition to void every pardon and commutation issued by machine after August 3rd. Cite Article 2. Cite cognitive incapacity. Use the Constitution and hit them with it. The lead counsel nodded and started typing. Caroline looked at Trump. And if they'd push back? Trump grinned, not the polished one for cameras, but the one that meant war. They will, he said. And when they do, we'll take those signatures to court and ask one question. He walked to the fireplace, staring at George Washington's portrait. Who was running the government when the president couldn't even hold a pen? No one answered. They didn't need to. For the first time, they weren't chasing rumors or headlines. They had the receipts. And those receipts carried names. Hunter, Fauci, Schiff, Cheney. This wasn't just a scandal anymore. It was a system. A machine-signed blueprint. And now, the reckoning had a docket number. The blinds were only half closed, casting a low, intentional light across the room. There were no signs, no labels, and no visible government insignias, no badges, no seals. But it was clear this wasn't some casual meeting. This was high-level damage control. The atmosphere was tense, thick with the heat of frayed nerves and unraveling strategy. A sleek glass table ran through the middle of the space. At one end sat the administration's legal counsel, sharp in a suit, hands like ice, tolerance at zero. Nearby were a strategist from MSNBC, a senior editor from CNN, and two figures so shadowed that no one spoke their names aloud. The Biden press secretary stood over her laptop, sleeves rolled up, voice taut with frustration. They're framing this around cognitive incapacity, she snapped. And an office printer. Are you hearing yourselves? The lawyer tapped the folder before him. We're not debating how absurd it sounds. We're here because it's working. Someone from across the room added. Trump filed intent with the D.C. Circuit, citing Article 2 and presidential unfitness after August 2023. They're using the Neuro report Caroline dug up as the constitutional trigger. The MSNBC strategist leaned back, arms folded. So what? That report doesn't override precedent. You think AutoPen is new? George W. Bush validated it with the 2005 OLC memo. Obama used it. Trump used it. It's legal. Full stop. The lawyer remained still. But legality isn't their angle. They're not challenging the tool. They're targeting the timing. They're claiming Biden wasn't mentally competent and someone else acted in his name. The press secretary rolled her eyes. Fine. Then let's show the public a signing reel. She hit a remote. Footage from December played. Biden upright at his desk, faint smile, signing pardons in front of flashing cameras. The CNN editor nodded. Run this in every primetime slot. Get Jake Tapper and Joy Reid on it tonight. The message is simple. He signed. He was aware. It's on record. The MSNBC rep raised a hand. Shift the story too. Even if he declined after August, 80% of the pardons came before that. We blur the timeline. Make it confusing. People won't fact check. They'll feel their way through it. A young aide, nervous but alert, spoke up from the corner. What about the names Trump's dropping? Who? The lawyer snapped. Hunter? Fauci? Schiff? Liz Cheney? The room stiffened. The lawyer took a slow breath. Hunter's already controversial. They'll cry nepotism, but we've locked down his tax settlements. Fauci's covered. Federal immunities under the CO Protection Act. Schiff? He's old news. And Liz. He paused. She wanted the spotlight. Let her take the heat. She lit this fire. Let her burn in it. The press secretary crossed her arms. And if they actually proved Biden wasn't mentally fit to authorize those pardons? The lawyer's tone went steely. Then we follow the playbook every administration does when things get tight. Say it was reviewed. Say it went through cabinet. Say he delegated like any leader. Hell, throw the staff under the bus. That's what they're there for. But the risk? The CNN editor pressed. If they link autopin usage to executive action after cognitive decline, they won't. The lawyer interrupted. There's no evidence. No footage of Biden drooling into his oatmeal while someone else signs off. That's the bar. He let out a laugh, but it held no trace of humor. The arrogance people saw was really just exhaustion. If they want to make a case about mental fog, let them. He'd seen senators vote while completely drunk. Impaired judgment is what keeps this town running. The MSNBC strategist leaned in. So you're saying we stay the course? No, he replied. I'm saying we strike first. He pointed at the screen. Tonight, we drop the signing clips. Biden smiling, Biden nodding, Biden saying compassion matters. Then you go after Bush, and you hammer Trump for pardoning Stone and Bannon while pretending he gave a damn about ethics. He stood and slapped the table. And if anyone tries to argue Biden wasn't president when he signed those pardons, you say this, loud and clear, on every damn channel. He paused, eyes narrowed, then growled. Show me the law that says forgetfulness cancels a signature. Silence followed. Then came a faint chuckle from the back, but no one smiled for long. Because behind all the bluster, the real question was now hanging in every corridor of D.C. If the president wasn't making the decisions, then who was? It began with a spreadsheet. Just a single column, 8,000 names. But Caroline Levitt didn't see numbers. She saw patterns. And patterns don't lie. She stood at the front of the Situation Room briefing table, flanked by two staffers from the Office of Presidential Legal Strategy. Her laptop mirrored on the big screen. Trump sat nearby, arms crossed, eyes locked, not on her, but on the list. She clicked, Hunter Biden, pardon for firearms fraud, FARA violations, tax offenses. Click, Dr. Anthony Fauci, granted retroactive immunity from criminal referrals by the Select Committee on COVID Origins. Click, Adam Schiff, cleared of FISA-related obstruction, All DOJ investigations shut down. Click. Liz Cheney. Blanket protection from ethics violations tied to leaks of January 6 depositions. Turning to the room, Caroline's voice was calm but carried a sharp edge. "This isn't justice," she said. "It's an insurance policy, mass-produced by a machine." One analyst leaned forward. "We compared autopin usage to traditional clemency records. Post, August 3, 2023, over 68% of the pardons went to people with political or financial ties to the Biden White House, the DNC, or public health contractors." Trump said nothing. He simply opened a red folder labeled for immediate counsel review. Inside, donor lists, private emails, and confidential memos exchanged between DOJ officials and White House liaisons. He lifted a single sheet. "This guy?" he asked, pointing. "Why was he pardoned?" Caroline glanced at it. "Former Energy Blue Holdings exec. Ran 3 shell packs linked to the First Son. One of them covered Hunter's legal fees." Trump gave a cold smile. "Of course." She clicked again. The screen split in two. Left side, names of the pardoned. Right side, their affiliations. The overlap was blatant. "I don't need evidence they took money," Caroline said, voice rising. "I've got evidence they protected their own. That's not coincidence, that's intent. That's collusion, signed." An aide turned to her, hesitant. "But without direct recordings or a bribe trail, how do we prove it's criminal?" She didn't pause. "We don't need to prove a crime. We prove the abuse." Trump nodded slowly. "You don't need a smoking gun when the bullet hits 8,000 people." Just then, Representative Tim Burchett's voice came through the speaker, live from Tennessee, drawl thick and raw. "You know," he said, "this reminds me of something. We had a governor back home, Ray Blandon. Sold pardons like football tickets. They even wrote a song about it. Pardon me, Ray." Caroline gave a wry smile. "And now it's, excuse me, Joe." Burchett kept repeating, "They're going to say it's illegal. They're going to say autopin's fine. Don't panic. Go back to sleep. But listen, we've seen this before. If it walks like it, if it quacks like it, it's a swamp duck." The call dropped, but the silence that followed spoke louder than any speech. Trump paced the room. They thought using a machine would shield them, but every pardon signed with that device held the same legal weight. And if it was used to protect allies, cover up corruption, or wipe away responsibility, then it wasn't a pardon, it was an inside job. Caroline stepped in again. Now they're trying to frame this as compassionate leadership, as if these were just second chances. She clicked once more. The screen showed 48 individuals pardoned were either former or current federal contractors linked to COVID procurement fraud, Ukrainian energy deals, or DNC digital operations. "Tell me," she said, voice sharp as a blade, "what part of that sounds like compassion?" The room held its breath until the Biden camp struck back within the hour. CNN flashed a new headline, "Biden's clemency, compassion or conspiracy theory?" A spokesperson responded quickly, "This is Trumpian desperation, plain and simple. President Biden's clemency record reflects mercy, not manipulation." MSNBC brought in a retired DOJ official who stated, "Pardons aren't crimes, they're political tools. Every president uses them. Trump too." Right on cue, footage aired showing Trump pardoning Steve Bannon and Roger Stone. But Caroline was ready. "I'm not here to defend every Trump pardon," she said that evening on Fox. "I'm here to expose a pattern. Trump pardoned political allies, yes, but he did it himself. He signed the documents with his own hand, in front of the American people. Not from behind a curtain. Not using a pen operated remotely." She leaned in toward the camera. "They're not panicking because we're wrong. They're panicking because we're too close to the truth. The pen didn't lie. But the people hiding behind it? They're about to be exposed. The courtroom was packed, not just with attorneys and journalists, but with history itself. It was a federal hearing like none seen in recent memory, and the stakes were enormous. Presidential legitimacy, mass pardons, and the question of whether the United States had been run by a man or a machine. Caroline Lee stood at the front, navy blazer sharp, hair pinned neatly, no notes in hand. She didn't need them. What she brought was more powerful than paper. It was proof. She cleared her throat and stepped into the storm. Your Honor, she began, her voice clear and controlled. On August 3, 2023, President Joseph R. Biden was found medically unfit to authorize legal documents due to cognitive impairment. She held up the report. Under the courtroom lights, the title stood out, Federal Cognitive Evaluation, Restricted, Classified Level 4. A wave of gasps swept through the gallery. She went on. Despite that diagnosis, more than 7,000 pardons were issued between that date and December 30th. Of those, 93% were signed using an autopen, not a pen held by the president himself. Not a signature he personally authorized. A machine did it. She walked slowly across the room, her words hitting hard. We've examined the logs, timestamp clusters, batches processed at 3:14 a.m., 3:27 a.m., 3:32 a.m., hundreds of pardons per hour. And we're supposed to believe that a man who couldn't speak a full sentence without cue cards was running a detailed clemency process at 3 in the morning? She faced the opposing table, and now the question wasn't just who moved the pen, it was who held the real power. Biden's lead attorney rose smoothly, perfectly composed, voice dipped in condescension. Your Honor, if I may, he said with a polished, artificial smile. My colleague seems quite eager to put a pen on trial. Let's not forget, autopen use is legal, affirmed by a 2005 OLC opinion, and used by multiple administrations, including hers. Turning toward Caroline with a hint of smugness, he added, Unless the Constitution now mandates ink smudges and fountain pens, I suggest we keep this hearing in the 21st century. A flicker of uneasy laughter passed through the press box. Caroline remained still. Unless Article 2 was secretly amended, it still requires a president, not a stand-in, to faithfully execute the law. The defense lawyer waved a dismissive hand. Execution isn't about handwriting, it's about intent. Caroline struck back. Then whose intent was behind the 2:41 a.m. clemency that wiped Hunter Biden's charges, signed not by his father, but by a machine? Silence settled over the room. Caroline advanced to the next slide. Pardons issued, 8,064. Confirmed autopen use, 7,313. Issued after cognitive incapacity date, 6,728. Known political allies, 3,921. She turned to the court. I'm not implying the president was manipulated. I'm stating it. Biden's lawyer stepped forward, voice raised. If you want to criminalize a policy tool, fine. But this is a witch hunt. You've got no proof Biden didn't mean those pardons, only that he didn't hold the pen. Caroline gave him a cool, clinical smile. Ever try giving orders to a man who forgets which state he's in? Tension spiked. And before you call it a witch hunt, remember, witches weren't real. This is. We've got medical records, signature analysis, witness testimony. What do you have? A hunch and a CNN montage? The lawyer snapped. We have the full weight of executive tradition. Caroline shot back. And we have the weight of 8,000 pardons signed off by someone you admit may not have been mentally present. That's not tradition. That's dereliction. The judge leaned in, voice heavy. This court isn't here to argue politics. It's here to determine if federal pardons were legally executed. Trump's attorney stepped in. Your Honor, if these pardons stand, we set the precedent that a machine with the president's name in memory can replace constitutional authority. He paused. What happens when an autopen signs a war declaration? The room went still. Caroline stepped forward again. Respectfully, Your Honor, the American people deserve to know who signed away their future. And if that person wasn't conscious, accountable, or even awake, then every pardon under that illusion must be revoked. The judge nodded solemnly. Effective immediately, this court will review filings and accept preliminary motions to isolate all clemency orders signed after August 3, 2023, under autopen authority. Biden's lawyer sat back, jaw clenched. Caroline didn't gloat. She didn't have to. She had just cracked open the presidency and revealed that it was hollow inside. The camera cut in with silence. No music, no fanfare, no flag backdrop. Just Donald J. Trump at the resolute desk, hands folded, eyes locked on the country. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. My fellow Americans, he began, slow and deliberate. What I'm about to say, they never wanted you to hear. And for 4 years, they made damn sure you didn't. He paused, letting the words settle. This nation wasn't run by a president. It was run by a shell. A signature. A man lost in confusion, used as cover by those who knew exactly what they were doing. Leaning forward, voice lower now, sharper, he concluded, they faked a presidency with a machine. And while the man they elected struggled to form a sentence, they used an autopen to pardon their friends, shield their families, and quietly cover up their crimes, legally, until now. Behind him, the screen lit up with the word, revocation, in blood-red letters, effective immediately. Trump announced, I am signing Executive Order 14,592, suspending and nullifying all federal pardons and commutations issued through mechanical authority after August 3, 2023. He paused and added, that includes Hunter Biden. With another click, the screen split. On the left, Hunter Biden stepped off a private jet, greeted by 2 federal agents on the tarmac. On the right, a sealed and time-stamped federal subpoena. It also included Anthony Fauci. Footage showed Fauci being escorted out of a federal archive building, his access badge clipped and credentials frozen. Adam Schiff was next, cut to him standing outside a courthouse, flanked by lawyers, this time without microphones. And then Liz Cheney appeared. Trump's voice lowered to a growl as the screen flickered again, showing Liz leaving a closed-door policy meeting, her staff in a frantic rush. No press, no podium, just retreat. They believed they could use a weakened man to protect themselves, thinking no one would notice the pen signing the papers, the country moving forward blindly. But not this time. He reached beside him and lifted a folder, the very one Caroline had placed on his desk weeks earlier. The folder with the cognitive report, the metadata, the names. This was what they had buried and tried to hide while calling me dangerous, unfit, unhinged. His eyes glowed, not with anger, but with satisfaction. They claimed I was the threat to democracy, but the real threat wasn't the man with a loud voice. It was the silent pen, signing away justice without a witness. Trump stood, pressing both palms on the desk. Today that ends. Looking directly into the camera, he warned those hiding behind that pen, those running the country like a shadow cartel. You're next. The screen faded to black, then bold white letters appeared. The pardons were revoked. The war on corruption had begun. The studio was dim, not dark, silent, like a courtroom after a verdict. The microphone light glowed red, the NR sign flickered, and in the quiet after Trump's speech, Caroline Leavitt sat alone before the nation, armed only with her voice. No teleprompter, no spin. just the truth and its weight. They told us his hands trembled, she said softly but clearly. They said age was just a number, and compassion defined leadership. She paused. But what if that compassion wasn't his at all? Leaning forward as if reaching out to every listener, she continued. What if those hands didn't shake from age, but from knowing he wasn't really in control? That while he smiled for the cameras, others were signing in his name, deciding who was free, who escaped justice, who vanished behind immunity forged by a machine. She let the words settle. Autopin doesn't lie. It simply obeys commands, and through its obedience, it exposed everything. Reaching beneath the desk, she pulled out the folder that started it all. Slowly, she opened it. Medical records, signature logs, political donations linked to federal clemency. It was all there, hidden not behind locks but behind silence. Because the machine's power isn't wielded with guns or tanks but through quiet strokes of a pen. Her voice grew stronger, more confident. They called Trump chaos, said he'd destroy the system. But maybe the system needed a match. Because beneath all the polished speeches about healing and unity was a secret group, laundering legality through the name of a man who couldn't even keep track of the days. She leaned closer. Now we know the pen did the work, not the man. When this truth came out, they panicked and scrambled, because power assigned in silence is still power abused. After a pause, she declared, the pardons are revoked. The mask is off. From now on, every signature will be watched. She reached for the controls, preparing to end the broadcast. But before doing so, she whispered one last time. Written in history's ink, maybe he meant well, maybe he didn't know. But if the president didn't hold the pen, then who was holding the country? She clicked off the mic, and the screen went dark. Then, one final line appeared. They said he'd pardon them, but what if the pen was never his?